All right, good morning and welcome to our Metro Board activities for March 27, 2025. To start off, I'll ask our Chief Safety and Readiness Officer, Teresa Bastato, to provide today's safety contact.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the event of an alarm activation, we'll exit the conference room via the glass doors, proceeding into the lobby where we await further instructions from our security team. If we are instructed to exit the building, I'll lead the group to our designated assembly point while the security team coordinates with first responders. There's an AED located at the entry desk, and in the event of an emergency, I'll retrieve the AED and render aid while we await emergency services. Lastly, restrooms are located in the vestibule area adjacent to this conference room. Cycling is a great way to connect that last block or mile between a Metro stop and your destination, and Metro is incredibly bicycle friendly. Follow these tips to keep yourself and your bike safe and secure when using the system. Do not ride bicycles in stations, on platforms, or inside trains or buses. On Metro Rail, be sure to use the elevator down to the platform for your own safety and the safety of those around you. Do not bring your bicycle on an escalator. When wheeling your bicycle, please keep both wheels on the ground with the kickstand up and weight away from the platform edge. While on the train, do your best to avoid blocking aisles and doors. Up to 2 bicycles can be stored securely on Metro buses in the mounted rack at the front of the bus. Cyclists can easily load and unload themselves by following the simple instructions affixed to the racks. For safety, buses have special mirrors that allow our bus operators to see the racks and riders loading and unloading bicycles. When riding the bus, when near or approaching your stop, remind the bus operator that you're going to be retrieving your bike from the rack. For more information on transporting your bike using the Metro system, visit WMATA.com. This concludes our safety contact.
Thank you very much. Up first this morning is the Finance and Capital Committee, and I'm Matt Letourneau, Chairman of the committee. Since this is our first meeting of the day, I'll ask Ms. Ellison, the Board Corporate Secretary, to call the roll.
Chair Letourneau.
Present.
Vice Chair Klein.
Present.
Director McAndrew.
Here.
Director Santos. Director Haddon-Lowe.
Present.
Director Smedberg.
Present.
Director Drummer.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you very much. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. I'd like to move to approve the agenda as presented. Are there any objections by members of the committee to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Now to the approval of the minutes. We have the minutes of our February 27th meeting before us for approval. Are there any objections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as presented. We have 2 items on today's agenda, both related to our FY 2026 budget, which the board will be adopting next month. First, we're going to be receiving a summary of the comments that received as part of our budget outreach in January and February at our public hearings and through our online survey. Next, we'll review a revised budget for FY 2026 that includes increased efficiencies to generate additional subsidy savings. We understand that there's a lot of uncertainty out there in this region right now, both with the federal government and in our jurisdictional partners. And so this budget does have some adjustments to try to reflect that uncertain economic outlook. So heading first for the budget public engagement report, turn the floor over to Ms. Meyer for a review of the comments received as part of budget outreach. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Planning for the public engagement started early October 2024, and the comment period was officially open January 11th, 2025, concluding on Monday, February 10th, 2025. The following slides include graphics that summarize our engagement for the FY 2026 capital and operating budget proposals. Our outreach efforts align to the Strategic Transformation Plan and the Public Participation Plan for 2023 to 2026. The following cost savings tactics were made, including bringing the design work in-house from outside contractors to update all of our brochures, one-pagers, and station signage. We also used in-house forces to publicize the budget survey and hearing opportunities along the impacted stations, especially for the impacted stations that split the Silver Line between Stadium Armory and New Carrollton and Stadium Armory and Largo Town Center. In the past, we've used contractors to lead our outreach efforts at stations, and now we're proud to say those actions occur in-house. Additionally, we had our one-pager flyer translated into 14 different languages, with the website and assets being translated to Spanish for our Spanish-speaking customers. We began our efforts by posting a public hearing notice in the Washington Post on January 11th and again on January 18th. In-station signage included digital signage and A-frames, as well as the distribution of thousands of the brochures, as I had mentioned. We also included Metro Access and Metro Bus signage, stakeholder emails to 2,700 community leaders, as well to thousands of our customers, social media outreach to X, Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky, and paid digital ads across the transit app. We also put multilingual ads in Chinese, Amharic, Korean, and Spanish, and held 3 in-person hearings, 1 in each of the jurisdictions, along with 1 virtual hearing. This graphic outlines the results of our outreach efforts. Customers primarily responded to the budget proposals through the online survey. The transit app continues to be the best way to communicate with our Spanish-speaking customers, with over 99% completing the Spanish survey through the app push notifications and reminders. There were a total of 2,568 comments through survey responses, uploaded letters, and in-person testimony. There was high favorability of the proposed items. We can see that 90% of our customers approve the open payment system we are now calling Tap, Ride, Go. 82% approve of the splitting of the Silver Line at Stadium Armory. 85% of riders would take Metro if night hours were extended. 83% of weekend riders would take Metro if early morning hours were extended. 95% approve of Super Peak service on the Red Line. 93% approve of Super Peak service on the Silver Line. And 95% approve of extending half of the Yellow Line to Greenbelt. 4 areas that we could tell from the comments when we read them one by one. The themes were service frequency and reliability, 25% of comments, fair pricing and affordability, 21% of comments, fare evasion and enforcement, 11% of comments, and cleanliness and safety were 9% of the comments. We also wanted to include some verbatims from the open comments that customers had submitted to us that demonstrate some of the stats and the numbers that I just reported on. Comments about Super Peak service, the Tap Ride Go program, and continuing adjustments to the Better Bus Plan. So that concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions by committee members first. Questions by any other board members? Well, I think the lack of, I was about to say, I don't think the lack of questions is the reflection of anything other than the very comprehensive report that the board received with great detail, but we do really appreciate the feedback we receive from the customers, as well as all the efforts from staff and our partners to help make our process a success.
Thank you.
All right. We will now move on to our FY26 budget update. As mentioned, we do have some adjustments to the general manager's proposed budget, which is really a reflection of the conversations we've been having with our jurisdictional partners and the little bit of uncertainty that's now in our region on the economic front. So I will turn it over to our CFO, Mr. Webster, to walk us through this. And Mr. Webster, I said.
Oh, I thought
I said our CFO and Mr. Weda. Yes, Utende. I know Utende is our CFO. Thank you.
I didn't hear you. Sorry.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I'm Yetunde Olumide, Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. Joined by my brother, no. Joining me today, of course, is Tom Webster, Executive Vice President, Planning and Performance, and we'll be presenting together the FY26 budget update. Okay. Our FY26 budget update aligns with our commitment to good financial stewardship, which comprehensively supports our strategic transformation plan goals. Metro remains committed to financial stewardship, service reliability, and operational efficiency. In December of 2024, we presented to the board the FY26 proposed operating budget and FY26 through 31 capital improvement program. In February of 2025, the revenue forecast was updated based on higher ridership projections and a return to office mandates. This will allow Metro to reduce our reliance on capital funds to help cover the operating expenses. Today, Metro identified additional efficiencies to lower operating expenses and jurisdictional subsidies. These changes reflect regional economic conditions and Metro's focus on efficient resource management. In April, staff will seek board approval for the FY26 budget and FY26 through 31 capital improvement program. This revised FY26 budget recommendation includes $18.5 million in net subsidy reductions. These cost reductions are achieved through efficiencies in bus scheduling, staffing adjustments, service deferrals, and internal modernization investments.
Thank you. So as a reminder for the board and the public, the FY26 budget includes the incorporation of our first year better bus network redesign, as well as the Super Peak service on Red and Silver. As Yetunde just mentioned, it now includes a deferral of the extension of half of the Yellow Line trains to Greenbelt until sometime in December as a cost-saving measure, and includes opening earlier on weekends and closing later on weekend late nights. There are no fare changes included in the service proposal, and it incorporates the introduction of Tap Ride Go, our open payment program. And as far as next steps, in April, staff will recommend adoption of the FY26 operating and capital budgets and the 6-year FY26 to 31 capital program, as well as acceptance of the outreach report and public hearing results that Sarah presented earlier this morning. That concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, I'll open it up to members of the committee for questions. Well, I will just quickly start with one then. On the bus service scheduling efficiency and fleet reduction, can you just kind of walk us through exactly how that generates savings? I mean, we knew that we had a more efficient network that we're implementing, but we've gotten some additional savings now, so.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as the board will remember, when we set out on the first year network redesign, we were working to achieve more service for customers, improve service for customers using the same level of projected resources. So when the board adopted the redesigned network in November of last year, the team began work on the detailed scheduling using a new software system for scheduling, and with the benefit of having redesigned the whole network. In the detail of that work, we were able to achieve higher efficiencies than we expected in terms of productivity of the service, so a reduction in the amount of time buses are on the road when not providing service for customers, so an increase in efficiency, effectiveness, and productivity. That primarily is what drives the scheduling side savings. We also, now that we've finalized the schedule, need fewer buses in peak period service than we anticipated in November, which results in the ability to retire some of the fleet earlier than previously projected, and then some resulting maintenance savings from having a smaller fleet.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks. Mr. McAndrew.
Thank you. Appreciate the movement on the operating budget here. I think it's helpful for the state of Maryland. Has any discussion on the capital side and the newest economic headwinds that the region is facing factored into any proposed changes or thoughts of changes? And I'll just reiterate kind of where I started this budget exercise a few months ago, of like nice to haves versus must haves. And I think the must haves are ever more necessary as we move towards finalizing this budget.
At this time, we are not proposing or recommending any changes to the revised proposed capital program from last month. I think certainly there's additional uncertainty with projections of funding for the capital program, but fundamentally we face the same challenges of declining availability of capital funding, ongoing projects and programs that are underway and need to be completed, and then significant constraints for our state of good repair needs and future capital investments.
Yeah, and you can see that when you review the budget, right? So we've talked about, starting to move from a proactive to a reactive stance, right? So we have pages in here now that say exactly that. These funds will be used for a reaction. And so just kind of thinking through a couple items that looking at the budget, I just kind of, need to ask. One is, I'll just tick off a few, and you guys can come back to us at a later point. But so digital display and wayfinding improvements, we see a large plus up in FY27. Do we have an ROI on that? Or what is the, expected use of those funds on a must-have basis?
So thank you, Board Member McAndrew. I think in terms of what the objective is for those investments, we have historically large costs in maintaining, updating, and replacing static signage. We know that in modern customer experience, we want to be able to push information to customers that is current, live, and updates for their journey. So in terms of return on investment, it is improved information for customers, some avoided costs in having to update signage that can become stale fairly quickly with changes in service or changes in the community surrounding. So we feel continued modest investment in the digital modernization of our customer wayfinding is the right balance. We could do a lot more, but recognizing the resource constraints.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that essentially, as this budget, it's not necessarily one of extravagance, right? You can see that in terms of how it plays out, but there are, a few areas. So Union Station is improvements. We have an active discussion in the region in terms of the station expansion program that may or may not get off the ground, the larger kind of Union Station project. We've got 16 million here to address access issues for Union Station. And that's been something that's been on the books for a while. Is that, in the eyes of the team, considered a must-do today, or something that could be deferred and continued state?
Board Member McAndrew, you're correct. This project has been in development for more than a decade. Union Station is our busiest station. We're seeing 5-year highs there regularly this spring. This project is intended to improve customer flow at the north entrance of the station, where currently there's an awkward walk path to get into Union Station, into the Mark Amtrak VRE area, and into the paid area of the metro system. So this is fundamentally not a station expansion, or it is intended to improve the customer experience and deal with, frankly, crowded conditions in that location. So we recommend continuing with that effort that's been underway.
Yeah, I travel through the station regularly. I feel it across the board, including where the MARC riders are at. Can you give me a sense on the advanced signaling system? So we've got $209 million of investment over the next kind of 3 years. Where are we at the end of 3 years? Do we have movement towards an investment in signals, or what does that get us?
First, we will have next month a fairly detailed presentation for the board on our progress in the program planning for our rail automation program. We are in what I would describe as the planning and project development or program development phase of that effort. I would anticipate over the course of this year and then for the next couple, more refinement and maturity in the program plan, the beginning of design and engineering efforts. Construction is probably beyond that time period of major investment, but we would be approaching that within the 6-year period.
Gotcha.
Of course, subject to resources being available.
Future funding availability. Come on, DMV moves. So I'll stop my questions. I think, I've got 2 other items that I'd love kind of a memo on if we can, just to get a sense of kind of what is projected and where we're going to be at the end of the investment levels that we've got in here. One is fare collection modernization. Always a constant. We've been talking about upgrading the fare system here for a while. We're making a huge step this summer. But there's additional funds, significant funds. Just love to get a briefing of where we're at and what we're doing. And then the other one that was interesting to me, so we did the site tour recently, and unfortunately we weren't able to do, some of us weren't able to do the supply chain discussion. And so love to get a sense that capital line has funds in the upfront year, minor, and then pauses until the outer years. And so I'm just kind of wondering, what do we get in terms of modernization in the near term with the current capital strategy there?
So, Board Member McAndrew, we'd be happy to follow up with some more detail. I think similarly to some of the other programs, the early funding in the capital program for supply chain modernization is for project development to identify those longer term investments. So we're doing things every day, but major investments are essentially in the planning stage, and that's reflected in the program.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Ms. Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just following up on one of Mr. McAndrew's questions regarding the automation program, which the rails advanced signaling and automation was discussed extensively at DMV Moves on Monday. I thought that was actually a very useful and productive discussion among the region. I think people were really coming to closer to consensus about needs and future goals. You mentioned that there'll be a more in-depth briefing for the board next month on that at the April 10th or later in the month.
April 24th.
Whatever the board meeting date is for next month. That'll be very helpful. Do you expect that plan is going to include sufficient detail to provide like a life cycle cost analysis type of level of detail?
We are in, thank you, Board Member Klein. We're in the development phase of that life cycle cost analysis. I expect we will be able to share some initial results from that. But as we've mentioned a few times, we're early, so it'll be essentially a preview and an interim update with more to follow later this year.
Are you looking at it as doing the analysis in a tiered approach, like this phase or this part of the project? If we just did this, this would be the cost and benefits. If we did this phase, this would be the cost and benefits. I'm wondering, I encourage you to make the information as useful as possible for decision making. And actually that leads to another question that I had, which is if this program were to seek federal funding, does it require a selection of a locally preferred alternative? Or is that only for new expansion projects?
At this time, I don't believe with the existing or current federal funding programs, it would require a locally
Okay, it
preferred
doesn't have to
alternative.
go
It's an
through a whole-
improvement or an upgrade to our existing system, not an extension or
Okay.
expansion.
Yeah, that's helpful. I guess I see that there's funding, as Mr. McAndrew mentioned, in the capital program over the next 6 years for this program, 200 some million, I believe. And it's a little bit, the timing is a little bit awkward because we don't really have, I don't quite feel that, and you may, feel the same, we don't have the exact numbers, and yet we're putting numbers into the capital program. And I guess that's just how capital programming tends to be. I see you want to respond to that.
Yeah, I think it is standard to establish some initial funding for program development and in anticipation of
Yeah.
future investment being added. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to develop a project or program to compete for funding or to advocate for funding. So normally in the Metro capital program, we establish some initial seed funding to get underway, and then with a recognition that there's a broader.
Right. And I guess what I'm saying is this makes sense, but it also is a little bit iterative. So I imagine we're going to be coming back to this multiple times for
Yes.
next year as we're rolling the capital program forward. And so I guess, thank you for your work on this and encourage you when you do come back in April. I think we'll be looking for as much detail as you're comfortable sharing at that time.
I just wanted to add, if I could, board member, one thing we're trying to do is for anywhere we can find savings in the capital program, we're trying to move as much as we can into that bucket. So like last year, we found some more savings. That's why that bucket got, I can't remember, it was like $20, $30 million, something over the 6 year into that bucket. Because it is, one, going to be our most expensive need, and two, it's going to be our most important need. So over
I'm sorry, when you say that bucket, you mean the savings you've identified elsewhere are going into the.
well, like last year, we had some
advanced
savings in a
signaling
couple capital programs, so we moved more money
To the
for the
advanced
6 year into the rail automation signaling program. Because we know, to Tom's point, we're going to have to build a good local nest egg to go after the federal match. And so every 10, $20 million that we can squeeze into that is going to help us leverage 10 or $20 million of someone else's funding. So, I mean, this is going to be a massive program for years. So this is just, we're starting to, we're trying to buy a baseball team and we're far from opening day. But we really know we need a partner to come in. And so we need to get the diligence done to frame this up for really deep decision-making on the board in future years to go after the big funding to really make the program work.
Man, that makes sense. And that's exactly what I'm saying to you. I think that the diligence is in progress. We're sort of talking about this as if it's already a program that's already, fully baked, and yet there's a lot of analysis yet to be done, and I know that you're doing that.
A lot, yeah. We wish tomorrow we were obviously had $6 billion and we were all doing lots of things, and we are going to have to divide and conquer this into phases and segments over periods of time, and there's complexity, and that's why it's really important with the AK fleet and how we're managing that at the same time, and there's synergies between these things. So I think when we come back in April, there's going to be another really good conversation.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, any other committee members? Dr. Lowe, and then I know Mr. Smith. Oh, is Ms. Santos on the committee? Yes, go ahead first.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your work on this. Just a couple of quick top level comments. So echoing some of the concerns raised by my colleagues over here, as you're undoubtedly aware, several weeks ago, the district's CFO issued revised revenue estimates projecting lower than anticipated collections for the district. And so understanding, again, this is iterative process because these things can be adjusted anytime. It would be helpful to hear how Metro is, just assurance that Metro is planning potential scenarios depending on what happens amongst our various partners and potential changes in ability to support and changes in anticipated revenue and ridership.
Thank you for your question, Board Chair Santos.
Staff continually looks for and continues to work on different savings and modernization type efficiencies through the years. We have already hundreds of millions of dollars in savings, and we've discussed that ad nauseum. This current change or update to the budget includes more modernization savings also on the operating budget. Tom has talked a little bit about what's happening on the capital. Some of the things we're looking at include contractual obligations as it pertains to our telecommunications digital modernization footprint. Really reviewing those contracts and where applicable, bundling contracts as well. So for example, on our cellular devices, I think at this time over 4,300 cellular devices, and looking at bringing down the unit cost for each of those contracts or each of those devices down with our carriers. That's just one of the items. We're also looking at bundling where applicable materials and supplies and inventory type items where we may have 5, 6, or 7 even independent contracts, looking at consolidating those and starting to gain on some economies of scale associated with reduced unit costs on some of those items. So we continue to do this. Included in this update is about $10 million of cost efficiency reductions associated with some of the things they're talking about. And it's an ongoing process. One of the other things we're also looking at as relates to Tap Right and Go as well and cash modernization is changes in our cash collection footprint and moving the facilities that you may have toured already, the revenue collection, to our Eisenhower facility as well, and just upgrading some of our processes there, our equipment, and also reducing our footprint to do with cash as we evolve in the Tap and Go project. Thank you.
Thanks for those examples, and it's super helpful to hear specific examples of what your team and WMATA generally is doing to consider this. And I just would like to, again, underscore a theme that's come up for the board at prior meetings, which is just every single project or initiative on the capital side, we need to be sure that we are clear amongst ourselves about that each item is either contributing to cost savings and or somehow catalyzing economic impact for our partners, in the sense of obviously improving the customer service is important, but needing it to be tied towards return on investment, which is, I think, the themes of my colleagues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Love.
Thanks. The discussion earlier about modernizing signaling brought to mind for me that I feel like a piece of this that I don't have a grasp on is how this relates to the AK acquisition. And I know you've mentioned in the past, like, the two are related, right? That moving, there needs to be tech on the trains in order to use a different kind of signaling. I'd like to understand more about that topic, if we can ever have like a board breakout session for those who want to learn to understand more how CBTC signaling works.
Next month.
Oh, so that will be mandatory.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, there's a level of depth on all of this stuff, right? That Tom or I would be, let alone the board or whatever. But no, we've committed to the board, I think, for 4 months now, that we're going to be back in April to do a deep dive on rail automation. So we're working on wrapping that up, and expect a really good conversation. And obviously, there's a nexus between state of good repair, modernization theme terms, and then there's obviously a nexus between the vehicles, what's on what we would call the wayside, so the signaling, train control rooms, our fiber network. All of these things are all interconnected.
I think the final nexus that's most important for DMV moves, for us to kind of boil the ocean and try to get down to talking points, is the nexus between signaling, automation, and capacity. and how this relates to blue, orange, silver, and redefining the universe of options for how to address the long-term future of the system. I feel like we're really making progress on that. Like, I'm really starting to wrap my head around it, but I still feel like there's like one to two more like intensive sessions to go to get to that. And Tom, I know you're working on this, so thank you. My questions for today are about the super peak proposal. I'm concerned about crowding in the system, not just from a customer experience situation, but just from like a safety perspective. Because it does already, like a part of me is like, maybe I just like forgot how that it would, like, it was crowded before, right? But now it seems like really crowded. If we go forward with this revised proposal today, will we have the ability to revisit partway through the year if we just get to a place with crowding where there are safety concerns?
Yes, so I'll answer that, board member. Listen, all we care about is safety of this organization. So if we got to a point where we thought we had acute safety issues, we would first figure out how to do everything we could with every rail car we have available to deal with that within the budget. And if we needed to, we would come back and do a budget amendment before the next pick starts. So next pick is December, which means we would come to the board sometime in maybe September board meeting. Early October would be the absolute last. Tom would be upset if I said October because it's hard to get the pick and schedule done, but say September. And I think you are right to be, I don't say concerned, but certainly aware that crowding is becoming an issue. We have some strategies. Brian and I were talking about these yesterday. So we're lucky we both done some work in Hong Kong related to crowding strategies. So we're not there yet. We need people to spread on the platform a little bit more.
Interesting.
But we have blocks, what we would call a block, on red specifically. But basically the stuff that we're in our proposal to deal with are very full. And I think we're starting to see more crowding complaints yesterday. I'm going to mention we're close to almost 1 million people a day on bus and rail. We have bus. I know you got passed by on several buses the other day.
Okay, sorry about all the mad text.
No,
when the third one went by me, I just lost it.
Yeah, I barely got on a train yesterday. I got a text from someone complaining on the red line today. I mean, that's the problem we all wanted to get back to, right? We went from a place of there's no ridership to we're thriving again. And we have to come to grips that to deliver that extra service costs a little bit of money, but it is very little money in the scheme, back to the fixed variable cost thing. So we are going to watch that very closely. Red and the Courthouse Ballston corridor are clearly our two biggest challenges. The next one is on that Columbia Heights kind of area. So we're gonna keep watching all of that and make adjustments where we can within the budget.
So to your point about Columbia Heights then too, like this postponing the every other yellow until December. What is it that we think might change by December? Is it that we'll feel less uncertain about revenue, or is it just we know this is needed, but we can only afford to do half?
I would say on that one, we think we can get by for a little bit longer if we run some more 8-car train sets versus 6s in that part of the corridor. But then eventually that, that tool runs out of juice, right? And then you need the next tool. So we think it's reflected to what the chair said. We worked very closely. Board Member McAnder and I have talked many times to, Maryland was a little short, trying to obviously help with that situation. DC has this new forecast. We work really closely with the mayor's office and her team, city administrator on that. And then obviously the Virginia CAOs. So we really want to show that our partners are really important to us. We don't have our head in the sand, want to work with everyone, knowing that every million we can save is impactful for them. And so we can save a better part of $2 million to implement that 6 months later. The other part is we are doing a lot of implementation in June. So we have better bus to knock out as a team, which is going to be incredibly complex for this organization. Then we have the weekend service change, plus the split of the silver on the Maryland side. So at a certain point, we do have a staff capacity of execution, and we want to make sure if we're going to execute, we execute really well, not just get it done. So we think there's a variety of reasons to push that a little bit, and that will help save a few dollars as well.
Okay, I'm convinced. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we have one more question from Mr. Smedberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom, a lot of talk about bus scheduling, bus efficiencies, all this stuff. When are we going to get more detail on that? I know there's been some talk among the jurisdictional folks about this. Just wondering when that's coming, when we'll see it, and will that mean any changes to the subsidy table, or is it set as it is now?
Thank you, Mr. Smedberg. I think there are a couple of things. So this revised recommendation from today reflects the reduction in the budget and the subsidy and includes the revised subsidy tables.
Okay.
I think in terms of an update on the Better Bus Network redesign implementation and some of the efficiency gains we've seen and productivity gains we've seen as we've developed the schedule, we'll have an update. I believe it's scheduled for May for the board or around that time frame. And as a reminder, we're implementing on June 29th. So there's a lot of work going into that today. So look forward to providing more detail to the board on some of those, particularly on some of those efficiency gains, and then on the rollout of the service.
Okay, great, thank you. And then any on the capital side, any red flags, yellow flags you're watching, issues you're watching, funding opportunities that are there but may not be?
At this point, no red flags. I think we continue on the investment side or on the project side to see constraints in the market in some programs, leading to delays and changes in schedules, some cost escalation, the same typical things we've seen. In terms of funding outlook for next year, no change at this point.
Let me ask you a question just off. I was listening to the radio on the way in. The tariffs, are they impacting us at all? Someone asked me that the other day, and honestly, when we're talking about steel, aluminum, core parts, does that impact us at all?
Yeah, I'll take that, board member. I think it's too early for us right now, but talking to lead manufacturers of bus and some of the other big suppliers and components that I know around the industry, we had an APTA CEO meeting the other day where a lot of CEOs talk. It's definitely going to happen. We're hearing that from suppliers and manufacturers. So that's not on the construction side. That's on, if a bus is going to have to be more expensive, which is already unbelievably expensive, and things of that nature. So we're going to watch as an industry and see what happens. And then I think it's pretty clear that it's steel and other things in construction, there'll be some impact. So, I don't think everyone really is clear yet on what the tariffs really are and what country and what stuff we buy versus something else. But we're watching that closely. And obviously, when it becomes very impactful to a project, we would come back to the board and let you know about that policy impact.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Smedberg, Mr. Drummer, did you have a question? You good? Okay. So no further questions then on the budget. We'd just like to appreciate the work that staff has done, general manager and the team to come up with some additional reductions. As discussed, and would echo the comments, particularly from Dr. Lowe on the crowding and the fact that I think we need to use this budget to get ahead of that, which is why when we first proposed Super Peak back then, you could see it coming and it made sense, but now we're living it every day and it really needs to happen. So I think that's particularly going to be welcome from customers. Okay, with no further business to come before the committee, we stand adjourned, and I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Drummer to begin today's Safety and Operations Committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Letourneau, and welcome to the Safety and Operations Committee meeting. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. Our Are there any objections by members of the committee to the agenda as presented? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Now to approval of our February 27th minutes. Are there any objections? Hearing none, a big echo in my mic here. Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved. We have one item for action by the committee this morning, and it's a proposal to amend Metro's tariff, allowing Metro to ban riders who commit certain types of crimes, including sex crimes and assaults on Metro employees and customers. I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Dwyer and Chief Gonzalo to review the proposal.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairwoman, members of the board, good morning. Chief Gonzalo and I are pleased to be in attendance today to provide a presentation on Metro's proposed banning policy. Chief and I will walk through the objectives we aim to accomplish with the banning policy, as well as review what some of our peers agencies have undertaken in this security space. We'll conclude with plans for implementation with the intent of gaining board approval of the policy. Chief and I have been before this board 9 times in the last 3 years, providing updates on a variety of security initiatives undertaken by the authority, led by MTPD. Whether working with our municipal partners to address fare evasion statutes, getting police officials and officers out of administrative roles and back patrolling the system, establishing interagency security partnerships, or establishing our own police academy, there have been innumerable efforts that have clearly resulted in MTPD ensuring that we have security control of our system. This fact is probably best exemplified by the fact that crime on the system is at a 7-year low. We believe that one of the most impactful next steps we can take to continue to support employee and customer security is by implementing a banning policy. This banning policy would focus on 3 categories of crimes: sex crimes, assaults to WMATA employees or contractors, and assaults to customers. By adopting a banning policy, we can provide MTPD another industry-recognized tool to further strengthen point-of-entry policing and, most importantly, keep our customers and staff safe. The above chart on the slide represents a snapshot of how some of our large industry peers are dealing with banning policies on their systems. While there is not unanimity in approach, 2/3 of the peer agencies we surveyed do have policies, and half of these were instituted in the last 2 years. Chief will describe our policy provisions in more detail, but I would like to highlight that although we realize banning an individual from the system is a significant step, we will have progressive provisions built into the policy, such as an appeals process expected to be overseen by a jurist who is not an authority employee, as well as graduated banning periods based on the nature and number of offenses. The MTPD and General Counsel Office teams have done the research to ensure that our proposed policy provisions and appeals process falls in line with what we believe are industry best practices. I'll now turn the presentation over to Chief Gonzalo.
Good morning, everybody. So if you look at this slide here, so what we're really trying to get at is repeat and violent offenders. So this is just some 2024 data where you see sex-related crimes, 61 were committed by repeat offenders, and then there were 9 offenders that actually committed 3 or more offenses. We had 1 person that committed 6 acts during that year. And then when you look at employee assaults, not so much recidivism, but we did have 227 employee assaults last year and 4 repeat offenders out of that group. And there is legislation in the region to, support, this one tool that we're asking that the board consider. So Maryland has a bill that's pending about injury or assaults on public transit operators. And the district in Virginia do have laws that, provide enhanced penalties for people that commit an act of violence against a transit worker. So the banning policy, if adopted, the first offense would be 45 days, the second 90 days, and then the third would be a year ban, 365 days, if a person was caught on the third offense. So the banning policy would be incorporated into WMATA's tariff. MTPD currently bans passengers up to 24 hours for abuse of unacceptable or unsafe conduct. The banning policy allows for appeals of any banning period longer than 24 hours. And the banning policy will help MTPD increase safety and security in WMATA's system by actually going after some of these repeat and violent offenders. It's just another layer we think that we can add. And our, some of the tactics and tools that we do provide to try to, cut down on crime and keep people safe from being a victim. No, I don't think so, sir.
Hey, folks, in closing, nothing is more important to us at Metro, as the general manager referenced earlier, than the safety of our staff and our customers. Local 689 and Fraternal Order of Police leadership have both been briefed on this proposed policy and stand solidly behind it. The board is well aware of the emphasis the general manager and our team put on survey data. The data has indicated that a key driver in getting this agency back to carrying almost 1 million customers a day is the significant drop in crime we've experienced in the last number of years. It is recommended that the board vote to adopt the banning policy. We appreciate your attention to the presentation and are very happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the work that's been done to date. You all really put a lot into this. It's been a long time coming, and it's not easy. We understand that. I want to focus on three things. One, or three components that really jump out at me as I listen to the way you summarize what has been done so far. The focus, repeat and violent offenders. Excellent. There's the focus. The consistency, progressive actions, not just resting on where we were. And then the jurisdictional teamwork. And I think that's probably one of the most complex pieces over the years where we've had difficulty. It would be real easy for us to sit back and say that crime on the system, we've addressed it, and it's the lowest it's been in 7 years. And we could rest on that success. You're not doing that. We're continuing to move forward because, as the general manager stated today, it's all about safety. Safety is our highest priority. And you all are demonstrating that on a daily basis, you and your entire force and the rest of the entire team. So thank you for that work that's being done so far. It reminds me of the adage, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And you are taking some critical actions on a critical strategic bite in deterrence and accountability. Thank you so much. I'll turn the floor over to committee members, and I'll start with Dr. Lowe.
Thank you so much, Chair. Can you talk me through what's physically covered by the ban? Like for Metro Rail, it's easy to imagine inside that. Like, will the ban also apply to buses?
Yes, it will. All WMATA property, buses, rail, and parking lots.
Parking lots, great.
Our stations. as
Okay.
well.
And the stations? Okay. And like, what happens if someone violates the ban?
So if they violate the ban in Maryland or Virginia, they would be arrested for trespassing, and in the district, they'd be arrested for unlawful entry.
And is that a misdemeanor?
All three are misdemeanors, yes.
Chief, is this going to give you what you need?
Well, I do believe it will. And really, what I'm focused on is really the repeat violent offenders.
Yeah, to those 9 people, I would say stop doing that.
Yeah, and that's where our focus is, because right now we have about 40 individuals that we think are a problem on the system daily. If we were to focus on those 40 individuals and, with this policy, they're banned after they get arrested for one of these offenses. But if they show back up on our property, and we have a photo of them, we know who they are, they'll be arrested and, for trespassing. I know it's kind of like slowly going after these folks, but, I think the thing to do is to tell them that, hey, you're not welcome here. And then 2, you are going to get arrested if you show back up on our property. And I think that does have a deterrent effect, particularly particularly in these sex offenses.
Okay, and so basically MTPD will be able to stop these men before they reoffend
Yes, that's what we're trying to do.
because we can see it coming.
Yes.
Okay. How does the appeals process work?
So it's a written appeals process. The person will be given a banning notice, a physical notice. It's a written notice. We'll ask them to sign. They don't have to, but they'll be served with the notice. It'll describe what they need to do to appeal. It's a written appeal that they can deliver through the mail. And then WMATA set up a process where a former judge will actually read through the appeals and then decide whether to grant the appeal or not.
I don't ask this to like indicate that I like really want to get into this, but just kind of as we see how this is going, can the board be notified when someone gets banned?
Sure.
I don't even need to know their name. I just, numbers.
Yeah, and so the biggest part of this that we saw, at least when we did our research, but I'm not a social scientist, so it's hard for me to kind of understand some of the research methods. But with our peer agencies, the thing I've found with most, they don't really have a tracking system where we will. So, because I think, Mr. Clark and Mr. Dwyer limited to these few offenses and they weren't broad offenses, I think we'll be able to effectively track pretty well as to who's banned, how long they're banned, and when their ban expires, then, the officers will have to query if they stop Mike Anzello and they run my name through, it'll come up as to whether I'm banned or not. And, even though the officer may recognize me from banning me, let's say, 3 months ago, but you still have to run me through and you have to verify whether I'm still banned or not. So I think with the tracking mechanisms and some of the checks we have in place, I'm not going to say it's going to be perfect, but I think we're off to a pretty good start in ensuring that we don't violate anybody's rights and that we ensure that we're fair and we're just with what we're doing.
Yeah, and I don't even mean to suggest that I'm worried about that per se. I'm more just like, I just want to have a sense of, thank you for worrying about that. I'd like to just stay informed on this topic and have a sense of how things are going.
Board member, I can commit that we'll figure out it's either like a monthly or quarterly update. I mean, I think it'd be kind of hard to do one off.
Sounds plenty.
But like a quarterly update that says, here's how many people in the last quarter were impacted by this and how long, and if they were repeat. So we'll create like a process around that, and then there's just a regular notification, if that works for the board, just so everyone keeps aware of all the.
That'd be great, short and sweet. I now have a question about employee assaults. Thanks for sharing that data. It's a shocking number. Can you tell me if any of those assaults were committed by minors?
I don't have that information. Very few are, though, to be honest with you. Minors and juveniles in particular, and even with sex offenses, they don't make up. Most of them are adults, to be honest with you. Occasionally.
I mean, that's what I would hope, but I felt like I needed to check before we start banning people.
I can get you that information, because we do have it. I just don't have the number off the top of my head today.
Thanks, Chief.
Sure.
That's it for my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Smedberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Anzello, thank you for bringing this forward again. I think it's a perfectly reasonable policy and approach to things, and I appreciate you navigating a topic that obviously has a lot of sensitivities for a lot of folks and organizations. But I too was shocked when I saw this, the employee numbers, and proportionally, and I've seen incidences. In fact, I just saw one a couple days ago at Gallery Place where, a customer was being quite aggressive with a group of folks, and I applaud you for bringing a practical, sensible approach to this, and I think it's something that we definitely should do. Thank you.
Ms. Martin Proctor.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you guys so much for this presentation. It's obviously something that the board and the community have been working hard towards and thinking about in the full light of everything. I do have three kind of clarifications. Could we talk a little bit about, I'm presuming there's some sort of training that will be taking place with regards to this new banning process for the station managers and the bus drivers and such?
Yeah, so, well, first it'll be training for MTPD folks, to get them used to the banning. And that's sort of why we proposed, if the board decides to adopt this, June 2nd. So that'll give us time to actually let the public know, kind of get out the bugs with our tracking process and train our employees and, what the ban looks like.
And Madam Vice Chair, we have plentiful rules, policies, procedures that go out to frontline staff. We'll reiterate those to them. And as I indicated, the general manager and I have talked to 689 a couple of times. They fully endorse this, and Chief has been in touch with FOP, and they're solidly behind it as well.
Good. Great, thank you. Second, I guess clarification would be with regards to, we already have a lot of supportive services. I know that we're working hand in hand with regards to that, especially when it comes to our employees that have been affected by these crimes.
We do, under Teresa Impastato and Dr. Amy's leadership, we provide immediate and the best care we can for people who've been involved in something like this. And as a matter of fact, I know we've talked a number of times about the team that Chief has, crisis intervention specialists.
Yes.
They're specially trained, so when we've had some traumatic things occur, unfortunately, we've weaved them into kind of talking to our staff as well. And it's just, it's a great use of a resource when people really need it.
Great, would love to have them in front of us one day. That would be wonderful, just to kind of get some feedback
Certainly.
on what they're seeing on the front lines and how we as a board can obviously best support them with that.
Would be anxious to do that. We're very, very proud of the team.
Thank you, thank you. One last clarification. I'm concerned about the unhoused population. You mentioned something that kind of triggered that for me with regards to the appeals process. I know that it has to be in written format. Do we have a pathway for addressing, I guess what would be that type of gap when these type of offenses happen and I'm concerned with our unhoused population?
We do. The crisis intervention specialists are trained on providing all sorts of resources to folks, and I would expect, Madam Chair, that they'll be, we'll weave them in as needed here. Okay. I would say that, we've really gotten away from always having MTPD respond to the special police officers when we have an issue. I think, we've probably been at it with the crisis intervention specialists for about 2.5 years. Chief and Ms. Lewis and the entire team, LP has done just an incredible job with them, and that will continue kind of weaving them into this. And Chief and the team do everything we can to get people the help they need or to address things accordingly and in the most humane way we can, I think.
Right. Would love to kind of follow up with that with regards to that. I'm just thinking logistically, if we're going to ban somebody, it has to be in writing. They need to have some sort of address. And if we're dealing with a homeless population, would love to know what those interventions would look like. But in addition to that, I just kind of want to close with thank you. I know that this is a lot, and I know that we're definitely working and moving forward to making sure that everybody's civil rights are respected and remain intact. We have policies with regards to profiling, and that we're definitely moving forward in the vein of keeping everybody safe, even those that are in need of help and services at that time. So thank you guys so much, and thank the whole team.
Thank you. Have a follow-on question by Mr. Smedberg, followed by Ms. Klein, then Ms. Santos.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, something Martin, Board Director Proctor mentioned, the training. Are there different types of training for, say, a bus operator versus a station manager, or is it all the same type of training? Is the nature of, say, an assault on a bus versus, a station manager having to intervene or confront someone?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we want people, I mean, you have a right to protect yourself. That's, that is your right. And that is part of our de-escalation type training. But what we try to do is get folks not to put themselves in a position where they have to do that. So the best thing is just to back away, call the police, and let us handle that. The banning part of it will really, it's more of an education type campaign. And we'll describe what the process is for that. So, and it's really to call the police. And if you see the person again that you saw was banned a few days later, call us, because like with the Metro Integrated Command Center, we can focus down on the camera. We can get an officer, maybe not at that location, but if the person gets on a train or a bus, we can intercept them someplace else, and they'll get a snippet of who the person is, and then we'll be able to stop them, confirm that they're on the ban list, and take action that way. That's really what we want the bus operators and the station managers to do.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Klein?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, most of my questions have been answered, so I'll just make a comment, how much I appreciate the work on this. I think, obviously, prioritizing safety for both the employees and customers is a top priority. And I was struck, actually, the correspondence between the general manager and Secretary Duffy earlier this month, still March, really highlighted how many tools Metro has in place to ensure safety for customers and employees. But we need more, and we need tools that are targeted to the situations that we're experiencing, and it seems to me that this one is appropriately targeted. I was also struck by the fact, Chief, that you said that many of the other agencies don't really track what's happening with their banning programs. And I really appreciate your commitment to track this, because I feel like we need to know that this is an effective tool, and tracking those metrics is going to help us know that. If it's not, we can come back and address whatever shortcomings there might be. So I guess I just wanted to say I appreciate your work and the commitment to continue with this going forward.
Thank you. Ms. Santos?
Thanks, Chair. And Sarah took some of my thunder, because similar, but just adding on to that, which is also expressing thanks for coming back to us with comparables and some of the data that we requested, because it's helpful for us to be able to understand how other systems are dealing with this similar challenge. And also wanted to highlight that what is being proposed is consistent with Metro's more broader strategy of promoting safety as one of the tools to grow ridership and to promote the long-term sustainability of the system, because there's obviously the outcomes or the data supports that decrease in crime improves perception of safety. And so it seems to be a positive feedback loop. So I appreciate the commitment to come back to us to help us understand the efficacy. Because as you know, this was one of the questions we had before. I think there's pretty unanimous support from the board on continuing to give your officers the tools that are necessary to continue the emphasis on making the system even safer. So we look forward to hearing more about the efficacy as this gets rolled out. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Letourneau?
Thank you. I might as well comment now, because this is also on our agenda later, but I was just going to quickly thank the staff for this. I was completely in support of this the first time we proposed it. I remain in support now. I think if anything, the need has just gotten even greater. Protecting our workers, protecting our customers is like the most fundamental thing that we can do. And there's no question in my mind that this will help do that. So I want to thank both of you, as well as the general manager, for getting across the finish line on this one this time. Look forward to voting for it later in our meeting.
Thank you, Board Member.
Thank you. I have one question. I don't want to get in the weeds, but I was at a WSTC meeting yesterday, and there was a challenge on how we identify individuals that are repeat offenders or otherwise. In a very succinct way, can you explain for the public and for the board how you identify individuals?
Yeah, so basically it's based on their criminal history. So if they've been arrested for the same offense before, then that's how we classify them as a repeat offender. So and the officers, there's a nationwide database through the FBI, NCIC, and then there's local databases, Wales and DC, uh, uh, Beeson in Virginia, and then Maryland has a database as well, and meters. And what they'll do is they'll run Mike Anzello through, and they'll get my criminal history. So if I've been arrested before for sex offense, if I've been arrested for aggravated assault, or if I've been arrested for robbery, the officer will get that information. And so people that commit, numerous crimes, particularly sexual assaults or indecent exposures, their history comes up, and that's how we know that they're repeat offenders.
And to take it a little further, tactics, techniques, and procedures, if you're authorized to explain it, how do you identify who a person is in the system? You talked about locations with Dr. Lowe, but how do you identify who a person is?
Yeah, so a lot of the times either the officer will recognize them, or they may commit another crime that will be caught on the camera, and that's how we'll identify the person.
Okay.
And it takes a little bit of investigative effort, but the nice thing about Metro, as you all know, is that we have a lot of cameras everywhere, and that makes you still have to do some police work. You still have to go out and do the investigation, but having that piece of identification early in the investigation is extremely helpful.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your comments and your questions. I move approval of this proposed policy. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Smedberg. If there are no further questions or comments, I'll ask the Board Corporate Secretary to call the vote.
Chair Drummer,
Aye.
Vice Chair Martin Proctor,
Aye.
Director Haddon Lowe,
Aye.
Director Smedberg.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. With no other items to come before the committee today, we stand adjourned. We're going to take a quick break before beginning the Board of Directors meeting. We'll see you back in about 5 minutes.
Good morning. I'm Valerie Santos, Chair of the WMATA Board, and thank you for being here today. We'll begin with the approval of the agenda. I would like to consider the agenda approved with one Update, adding an employee spotlight following the approval of the minutes. Are there any objections to the agenda as amended? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Thank you. Okay, so we have sets of minutes for approval. There's the February 27 board meeting and the executive sessions from February 27 and March 13. I'd like to consider these minutes approved as presented. Any objections? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Thank you. Next, I would like to turn to our employee spotlight. Today's spotlight recognizes two heroes who are credited with saving a fellow employee's life this past weekend. Mr. Hatcher and Mr. Thomas, please stand. Saturday morning, just before 5 a.m., a track team had just completed work at the D&G Junction, which is on the aerial structure east of Stadium Armory, when an employee began feeling ill. Equipment operator Stanley Hatcher, noting the individual needed help, helped walk the individual to a place of safety where he could sit. A few minutes later, the employee became unconscious. Track repair Devore Thomas, who is trained in CPR, immediately responded and began chest compressions and utilized the AED defibrillator located on board the prime mover. They continued following their CPR training until EMT arrived and the employee could be transported to the hospital. Medical staff at the hospital later shared that it was the immediate actions of the employees who used their CPR training that saved their colleague's life. Thank you for your quick thinking and selfless actions that saved the life of your colleague. Like us.
Yeah. You go up and join for a picture? Recognize our two heroes? Sorry. Yeah, too bad Andy couldn't read it.
So we will now turn to public comment and reports by our advisory bodies. So we didn't receive any public comments in advance, so I'll turn the floor over to the people who have signed up and are here in person to provide comment. My understanding, the order will be Rico Dancy, then Sandy Nuzell, and then Adam Bressler. So Rico?
Good morning. I'm speaking on Union SLU 32 BJ Airport. We have over 175,000 workers, union member. 200 of them use trains, but I understand it's no bus out there for get them from A to B. If we might have cut the train, that means they have no way to get to work. All week, my union have asked me, can you go to the board and express the concern what we have 5 of them members came to our board meeting in tears. I understand they pain, okay? And what John Lewis always said, you see something's not right, not fair, speak up. Because we have 175 members, half of the airport don't have cars. They depend on public transportation. Okay? Want some of y'all come out there and talk to them and see how this is going to affect them. And I talk to them every single day. Okay? United. Thank you.
Sandy?
Good morning. I'm Sandy Newzell. I am the second vice chair for the Bus and Rail Subcommittee, but I'm also speaking as a public comment. I really appreciate that Metro employees and the board, however you work this out, have allowed the the AAC committee members to attend site visits. So I've been on 3 site visits recently, and there are always 2 or 3 times as many Metro staff as AAC members attending. We've had an opportunity to see the new version of the Metro Access van, which clearly has much more comfortable seats, facing front wheelchair positions to make the ride more comfortable for all. We visited the call center, which is really important for scheduling, finding rides and rescheduling rides for Metro Access riders. They've come a long way. They do have accessible employment for people who need modest accommodations for vision or hearing, which is very admirable. And then also we had a chance to see the new facelift for the fare machines, which are much, much easier to understand. And I want to give a shout out to Sarah Myers and her whole team for all the work they've done making things more visually accessible, digital signs on the platforms, and it just goes on and on. I cannot believe the rapid response and to suggestions from the public and the AAC. Thank you.
Adam Bressler?
Great feedback. Thanks.
Hello, board. Good morning. I have 3 quick items for your consideration, humbly. First, as you're probably aware, today is the 49th anniversary of Metro rail service. Back in 1976, on this date, Metro first served from Rhode Island Avenue to Farragut North. I think 50 years is a pretty big milestone coming up next year. And in advance of the 25th anniversary, the board formed an ad hoc committee. I know you're very busy with DMV moves and the Better Bus Network this summer, but if you have the bandwidth, I think that would be a very cool thing for you to do in the coming months. Second off, I have been doing a lot of research into Jackson Graham, the very first general manager of WMATA. And I'm a little bit disappointed that once you move to this beautiful new headquarters, there's no real commemoration publicly for him. I know you have the internal Jackson Graham Award, but I think a man of his figure, many board members who occupy seats that you now occupy credit him with single-handedly the most important figure in getting Metro Rail built. So I'd like to see some public honor of him. Possibly you could dedicate a station to him like you did with Carmen Turner, possibly Pentagon City. He lived nearby while he worked for Metro. And then finally, my last point is with regards to the new banning policy. I fully support the banning policy. I have no disrespect whatsoever. I think people should absolutely, with those crimes, be removed from service for the safety of the riding public and employees. With that being said, I want to make sure procedure is followed. And it appears that Section 76E of the compact requires a public hearing before any regulations are changed or amended or adopted. So I'd like some consideration possibly. I think that's very important. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we'll hear from our Accessibility Advisory Committee Chair, Patrick Sheehan, who I think is virtual today. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate being able to give this testimony virtually today. I want to start off with Metro Access. Basically, we're seeing continual improvement on the on-time performance. Since January, the numbers have been going up, and we appreciate that. We've been putting special emphasis and special study on the not only the call center, but where's my ride? And we're seeing those numbers and hold times on those calls decrease. So we're finding that much more effective. So we're able to pinpoint a lot of these areas for improvement based on actually some of the numbers that we're getting from Jordan Holt and her people. She was nice enough to come to our last Metro Access meeting and help us zero in on some of these call center numbers. Where's my ride? So we're seeing resources being put into those areas, extra training, and we're seeing results and less complaints in that particular area. So that's good. The other area, just to piggyback on what Sandy was saying with respect to the Metro Access vehicles, the new ones that we tested, that we gave input on last month. We've had some individuals with disabilities ride in those vehicles, and they're saying exactly the same thing that Sandy said. They are comfortable. They are easy to get around in. The suspension on those vehicles is really much improved, and they put in some nice amenities also in those vehicles that people are appreciating. So a really good choice. I know that they're still being evaluated for improvement as far as going forward, but we're finding that the feedback that we're getting also is very effective. With respect to the signage, we appreciate the fact that we have been able to take a look at the signage going forward, and particularly with respect to low vision individuals, such as Sandy and others that have been given their feedback, we find that the color contrast in the signage is going to be another area that we really appreciate moving forward. It's much clearer. They've been before our committee, and we've talked about positioning the signage so it's easy to take a look at, and that's really been helpful. Lastly, I would say on the bus area, Don, thank you very much for the work that you're doing. We're going to be working with Prince George's County in the month of April to take a look at the bus network within Prince George's County, taking a look at the Transit Vision Plan 2025, comparing it against what can be done in what was done in 2018, 2023. To see what we can do to improve the bus network within Prince George's County, which should really help folks within that county. I think, as I've said before, we'd like to take this plan moving forward and move the next area of study over to Fairfax and see what Fairfax is doing with respect to their transit vision plan. The other areas of interest that we are looking at and we are working with individuals on deal with the floating bus stops or remote bus islands within the district, within the DC area, ensuring that they are accessible. And also we're tracking the clear bus lanes legislation that is in Annapolis, ensuring that the bus stops have clear lanes for the buses to be pulling in and picking up people, and the people with with cars are not parking in those zones, hoping to improve the way the buses are moving within the state of Maryland. So those are the areas that we are working on, that we are looking for improvements over the next couple of months, and we will certainly report on our findings in those areas going forward. Are there any questions for me? Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Pat.
Okay.
I will now call on Mr. Cole Stout for the RAC report.
Thank you, Chair Santos and members of the board. Last month, well, I guess this month at our meeting, we focused a lot on the severe winter weather plan, kind of going back to what happened over the winter, and fingers crossed we don't have any more snow events. You know how DC spring can be. Right? You never know. So just thinking about through things like how detours work and how customers and riders interact with those changes in real time. 'Cause I think we saw some issues with buses, like the apps, whether it was Metros or others saying a bus is coming, but it's actually detouring. So customers are staying at a bus stop in the snow and a bus doesn't actually come. So how do we navigate that? And we understand it's certainly a challenge and stuff that happens in real time, and it's going to take some time to figure out, but appreciated the conversation. You'll also be asked today to appoint 5 new members to the RAC following recent board action to expand our numbers. I do want to thank the staff for helping us get the word out. The applications were open. We received over 200 applicants. And we talked to a lot of really awesome candidates from across the transit area. So it made the decision difficult. But we're really attempting to bring together a broad and diverse set of riders that are spread out geographically across the transit area, use the system in different ways, have different choice structures when they're deciding to ride Metro or not ride Metro, and what routes to take. And so everyone that we've put forward today comes to the conversation with a really positive outlook on Metro's future, certainly recognizing that there's still work to do and that we can improve the system, but we appreciate the attitude that all of the people we interviewed with had. And we always did say to everyone who might have applied and not been selected for this round, that meetings are open to the public and all voices are welcome at RAC meetings. And our next one is next Wednesday. And it'll be our quarterly in-person here at Metro headquarters. And we do have a really full agenda, including, I believe Randy is scheduled to stop by, and we'll talk about better bus implementation for the summer, finalize our annual report. So next month, you'll have the annual report to review. We'll elect new officers, and I expect we'll probably have a discussion on the prioritization of the FY26, like nice to haves, as Director McAndrew said in the Finance Committee meeting, just to ensure that there's alignment with rider priorities and wants, certainly not must-haves, but those wants in the system. That's what I have.
Any questions?
Yeah, I thought that some of the findings from the survey comments about the budget were just a little surprising to me, and I'm not sure that they're representative of like the full universe of riders. And so I'd particularly be interested to hear from the RAC your thoughts now that you see the summary of the comments. If anything stood out to you guys, it'd be
we'll
interesting to hear. Yeah.
Definitely take a look. I think our annual report, while it's certainly not like a scientific study, we try to theme out what riders are thinking, trying to find the themes and the things that we can help advise you all on where your priorities you want to spend your time focused on. So we'll definitely take a look.
Thank you very much. That concludes our advisory reports. Now we will move on to the chair's report. So first of all, as Cole just mentioned, we have some administrative business before us, which are these appointments to the Riders Advisory Council. As you may recall, the board voted to expand RAC membership from 11 to 15 in January. So in addition to the 4 new positions, there is 1 existing vacancy for a total of 5 appointments today. As was mentioned, staff recently conducted a recruitment for those openings and received over 200 applications. And my understanding is there's even 100 of those were from DC alone. And many of folks had prior volunteer experience, civic engagement, and I think it's, again, testament to the excitement and support that Metro has within the region, which is great. To reiterate, thank you very much to those who applied. We very much appreciate your interest in serving on this important advisory body. I'd like to move the following RAC appointments, which are the ones that were recommended to us by staff for approval. Eli Crivero Frankel for an at-large seat with a term to expire in December 2025. Irene Stephens to represent the District of Columbia with a term to expire in December 2026. Joseph Pope to represent the state of Maryland with a term to expire December 2025. Hendeke Tefesse to represent the Commonwealth of Virginia with a term to expire December 2025. And Alex Mendelson for an at-large seat designated for a high school student within the Metro service area with a term to expire December 2026. Can I get a second? I heard it. Thank you, Director McAndrew. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Next, I want to recognize that March is Women's History Month. So Women's History Month is an annual observance that highlights the contributions of women to events in history and our contemporary society. The National Women's History Alliance selects and publishes the yearly theme. The theme for this year is Moving Forward Together. In the spirit of moving Metro forward, I would like to recognize the women of Metro who every day strive to ensure that people in the DMV have access to jobs, education, healthcare, and much, much more. And also just to acknowledge for the last 2.5 years that 7 out of our 15 board members happen to be female. It's the most in Metro's history. Women are also well represented throughout the authority's leadership, from the board's direct reports to the senior executive team, management, and of course, colleagues throughout Metro. So just a thank you to all of our colleagues and staff for all that you do to keep the region moving. So yay to Women's History Month. This concludes my report. I will turn the floor over to our general manager for his report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we have incredible, I am fortunate on the senior executive team and our management team to have incredible women leaders. So thank you for recognizing them and for all the work they do every day. We're going to start off with some ridership information, and as soon as that slide catches up. And so we are at 47 months of consecutive ridership gains. So March, we are, unless something really goes weird here the next couple of days, I think we're at 48 months of ridership growth. I want to highlight that yesterday we had almost 570,000 trips on rail, which would be the highest day we had in 5 years. So 985,000 trips between bus and rail yesterday approximately. So we are very close back to 1 million a day. Maybe with a little warm weather and a Nats game today, we might do it. But certainly watching this closely, and I think it really goes back to, it wasn't that long ago that we had some people in this region saying that, transit is dead, our region's not gonna, what are we gonna do? And I think it just highlights the volume of, never count out the DMV, don't count out Metro, and it's really great to see the comeback of the organization, and that number reflects that. We had the busiest week in 5 years last week. I think we'll beat that this week. A couple things, stations that I think are interesting. So all-time high, so not just the last 5 years. Herndon, Reston Town Center, Loudoun Gateway, all high, and Noma. We crossed 30,000 people yesterday at Noma, which is amazing considering what Noma was and that infill station, and it's 30,000 people at that station. So that's a good example of growth all over the region, which we like to see. If we go to the next slide, I want to highlight something we came out yesterday publicly. So ISSA is this organization that talks to cleaning and just cleaning and health and wellness safety. And our team won this, they're an international organization, and we won the national award for cleanest public space. And this is against airports, and there's I think 1 or 2 college campuses and other facilities like that. We always knew that we ran a clean system here, but I am so proud of our team. I went out and visited with some of our custodian staff, our vehicle cleaning team, the work they do every day to make sure that, better part of 1 million people are in and out of our buses, our trains, our parking garages, and our rail and our stations in a clean environment. So just really kudos to the entire team and how hard they've worked to get recognized. So this was a voted thing by the public, right? So to have that public recognition, I think, really speaks to the type of system we are all fortunate to have here. So just really thankful for them and congratulate them for the work they do. The next thing up, and again, this is something that was out this week. So as the public commenter mentioned, we are actually got a committee internally already set for Metro, the 50th anniversary. But interesting is the 50th anniversary ties into America's 250th. And so we are very excited next year. We want to really work closely with the federal government on this as well. We expect to be incredible celebrations next year. And one thing that and Sarah's team has taken the lead on this is part of our uniforms and branding and all of our design guide. We realized that for a period here, we didn't have the American flag on trains like we do on our bus fleet. So this is something that we now are finally into the execution stage. So those are out all over the system. But it's a nice way to reflect, again, we are America's metro system. And it's really important, I think, as our national capital, as we welcome people from all across the country and around the world, they see this beautiful system and, representing America at its best. The next piece here is I want to mention the region is going through some challenging times related to, especially on the federal side, of just workforce availability and different things going on the federal side. We are positioned to have an upcoming hiring job fair, and we're going to be really looking for people that might have some experience in things that unfortunately sometimes don't rise to the top of our hiring because we are such a big, diverse organization, and obviously service is the #1 thing we do. But people in human capital and procurement and finance and IT, digital modernization. So there's people out there that are currently looking for opportunities. We're putting together a whole package, and we want to help streamline that process here as well. So Sherry Dickinson and her team are taking the lead on this. So more information to come soon. But we know that there's talented people in this region, and we are a great organization. We'll be looking for more people to come join. Next up it's cherry blossom season. Some of us have pins. If you don't have one, I'll make sure you get one. So I think peak is, I don't know, they haven't announced it, but maybe it's like Saturday. Maybe they did announce it this morning, but it's seeming like it could be Saturday. It's going to be a fantastic season because it was nice and cool, so it's going to spread out here a little bit. No major track work for 5 weeks. This is something we do every year to really make sure our weekends can move along really well. Last weekend, we had over 1 million combined bus and rail for the weekend. We are gearing up for a very busy weekend. We have the Nats in town, obviously opening day today, but they're here all weekend. The Caps are playing. Defenders are playing. DC United is playing. It's going to be 75 degrees. We are going to have a very busy Metro weekend, and we can't wait to get people around. On April 6th is the Cherry Blossom 10 miler, and we announced we're opening early, just like we did last year, to get people around. And we moved a ton of people last year, and again, really showing that community value Metro brings. And then hopefully, if you got a chance to see our wrapped Metro Access, Metro Bus, and Metro Rail, they are getting a lot of attention online. They're just a really beautiful graphics package this year. And, it's nice. I think, as Board Member Lowe says, it brings joy to people's day every day. So we hope people take advantage of that. And we have our smart cards out on the system as well. As we move forward, as I wrap up, I want to talk a little bit about just quickly the DMV Moves meeting. Thank again our Vice Chair, Smedberg, who is co-chairing that with his co-chair, Councilmember Allen. Several of you are on the task force. I think we had a very good meeting this week. I think to Board Member Klein's earlier comment, there's clear consensus building. I think there's some acknowledgement that we as an organization have taken our cost control very serious and trying to solve our operating budget now on our own. The capital side is clearly where we need to focus on. We are going to come back to you all. So the next meeting will be in May for the task force, but as we talked about at the task force meeting, there'll be a deep dive on rail automation and regional bus planning at the WMATA April board meeting to really kind of how those two things are working hand in hand together. On the regional coordination on Better Bus, we have about 100 days to launch, just actually a little less than 100 days to launch, and there is a countdown clock. 500 signs scheduled to be installed by this week, so we're making really good progress. We already have about 30% of people trained on the new system. I've talked to a bunch of people about getting training. So a lot of the internal stuff's working well. I've talked to your point, board member, I've talked to a couple of the different agencies. I think there's a pretty good synergy of what's going on with our regional partners. I have yet to hear anything of very significant issue, but the team is just want to remind the board or ensure the board, the team is laser focused on this. We are not going to get this 100% right. There's going to be a couple minor issues here and there. We're trying to get ahead of those as best we can, and we're going to be out in a lot of high vis that week, making sure our customers get the support and our employees get the support they need in all this work as well. So we'll keep you updated. I know we're going to have a deep dive. I think it's going to be the early, actually, I think we have one meeting in May. We'll have a deep dive in May on Better Bus just before we go into launch. With that, that's my report. Happy to take any questions or comments that the board may have. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for the general manager? Mr. Smedberg?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Randy, what about World Pride? What are your folks doing? Or, we don't have to answer that now, but, there are going to be millions of people here, particularly those 2 weekends.
Yeah, well, no, we are very connected to both the organizers, everyone that's working on it. So I think we know what service we're going to have to deliver if the max crowd show up. We're thinking through that. The good thing is we're running such high frequency good service that we're going to be able to manage a lot of that because it's going to be quite a bit. But we're certainly thinking through where we have to surge extra trains or extra buses. Obviously, the parade would be the pinnacle kind of event, which is already so big of an event. And where that is, I know there's some permitting, which is already so big of an event. Where that is, where there's permitting pieces that are going to be worked through, but I can assure you that it's highly competitive. It's very simple. And we're thinking through how we can really just welcome everyone. Our whole thing is very simple. I think a lot of people from around the side in the world that come here and get a great experience. So I think a lot of staff is excited for this event, and hopefully it'll be a really nice transfer. So we're working through all that as well. So we're working through all that as well. The timing, obviously, depending on the board action relative to April 10th on the weekend piece. Assuming that the board executes on that, we will be looking to probably flex in on some additional weekend hours for the 2 weekends on that, which we could do without a big schedule change because it's just a kind of a weekend, 1 weekend piece. But we want to make sure that synergizes with the April 10th piece as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other follow-up questions? So just to clarify, Randy, you're saying the Better Bus update for the board will be at the next board meeting or in May?
I think we have it scheduled for May.
In May, okay.
I'm getting some head nods correct from the team, so yeah, it's May.
All good. And as we've shared with the team before, I mean, for those of us from Team DC, I know that there's keen interest and excitement about rolling it out and making sure that there is, but in case there's anything before May, because I suspect there will be, we'd appreciate any updates in the meantime. So.
Yeah, maybe what we could do is we'll do like a memo update in the next few weeks, just where we are status, and then May we can get a really comprehensive one. I'm not aware of anything between Team Metro and Team DC that's not working well, but I know the team is literally talking every single day. But I think that's a good. We'll put together maybe within a week or two here where we are, and then set up for May. So thank you.
Yeah, and the context is just making sure that our customers, right, are aware of what's happening and when, and making sure that whatever DC needs to do and vice versa.
Yep.
Anyway,
Thank you.
All right, now we'll move on to the report by the Safety and Operations Committee. Mr. Drummer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The following item was referred to the board at this morning's Safety and Operations Committee meeting. It's the MTPD banning policy. Staff sought approval of a policy to allow the prohibition of individuals who commit certain crimes, including sex crimes or assaults, on Metro employees or contractors and Metro customers. This action would amend the tariff to incorporate this policy. Madam Chair, I move approval.
Thank you. Mr. Drummer. Okay. Okay. I'll ask the board secretary to call the vote.
Chair Santos,
Aye.
Vice Chair Smedberg,
Aye.
Vice Chair McAndrew,
Aye.
Director Klein,
Aye.
Director Hadden-Lowe,
Aye.
Director Letourneau,
Aye.
Director Drummer,
Aye.
Director Martin Proctor.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have 4 items on our board's consent agenda today, and I would like to move approval of the following. First is the acceptance of the public hearing staff report and approval of change to mass transit plan for the west entrance at Ballston Metro Station. Staff requests acceptance of the public hearing staff report and approval of a change to the mass transit plan for a new entrance to the Ballston Metro Station. If approved, Arlington County proposes to fund, design, construct, and turn over to Metro the new station entrance. Second item is the acceptance of public hearing staff report and approval of change to the mass transit plan to relocate a vent shaft at the Gallery Place Chinatown Metro Station. Staff is requesting acceptance of the public hearing staff report and approval of a change to the mass transit plan to relocate a vent shaft at the Gallery Place Chinatown Metro Station in DC. Relocation of the vent shaft will allow for the expansion of the adjacent Capital One Arena, which will be funded by the district. Third item is the administrative clarifications to the strategic transformation plan. Staff has proposed administrative clarifications to the strategic transformation plan, or STP, which had been adopted by the board in 2023 to provide clearer direction and enhance the efficiency of the plan's implementation. And then lastly, last item is update to the equal employment opportunity, the EEO policy. Staff requests updates to Metro's EEO policy to comply with relevant executive orders and other directives. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, I heard Director McAndrew. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, so thank you. Now we're on to the jurisdictional reports. Mr. Smedberg?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we had a WMATA committee meeting not too long ago, but other than that, I really don't think we have anything to update. Do you, Matt? No.
No, I don't think so. Yep.
All quiet in Virginia. All right. Director McAndrew.
So just a quick update. We held our semi-annual commissioners meeting for the Washington Suburban Transit Commission, which included updates on the Purple Line project, which is making great progress for those that are interested. Approval of WSTC's next study to support transit-oriented development in both Prince George's and Montgomery counties, and updates from both Montgomery County DOT and Prince George's DPWNT. As the Purple Line approaches anticipated revenue service in late 2027, work is ramping up on a variety of fronts, including regional fare integration with WMATA system, system mapping and construction coordination with WMATA stations. Maryland and the Purple Line MTA team greatly appreciate WMATA staff coordinations and contributions to this heroic, big mega project. And just this week, on Tuesday, we entered dynamic testing for the light rail vehicle, so a big step forward for that project. Also, 2 items from Prince George's County. In Prince George's, engagement continues with WMATA on the Better Bus Network rollout in June, including a transfer of buses from WMATA to the county to support service swaps and updating signage at over 2,000 bus stops. WMATA's partnership is greatly appreciated from both Director Drummer, myself, the county, and so thank you for the team that's doing that work. The county also announced recently that it will operate the P37 as part of the Better Bus Network launch. This line will mimic the alignment of the current C8 between College Park to Adelphi. It will maintain service to the National Archives 2, which was proposed to be discontinued with the Better Bus Network Year 1 network, and a key priority for many at that site, as well as other stakeholders in the community. So happy to see good partnership and collaboration on that front. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Martin Proctor.
No reports at this time. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, on behalf of the federal government,
Yeah.
I just wanted to acknowledge, as I alluded to earlier, the correspondence that was exchanged between Secretary Duffy and General Manager Clark. Obviously, the letter from the secretary reflected the really strong interest in the quality and safety of WMATA's service. And I thought that the general manager's response was actually an extremely helpful summary of all of the ways that Metro is working towards customer and employee safety. So I actually recommend it to anyone. The response is public. And I know we've covered a lot of this in our board meetings, but it was a very effective summary. So I hope that there's a continued productive relationship there. And thank you to the general manager for that response.
Thank you. Director Lowe.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic to hear the secretary saying how important it is that federal funding go to transit that is safe. From the district, we heard about all the sports that are happening this weekend, but it's also Tyco Fest and the Kite Festival on Saturday. So there are all kinds of cultural opportunities to enjoy downtown DC, and you should choose Metro to get there.
And also wanted to mention the ANC meeting on May 10th, right? Okay. So do we have the details? We will get back to this. Okay. But just, I know my understanding is that the meeting had been scheduled for December, is now happening on May 10th, Saturday, where? In St. Coletta, which is on Independence Avenue Southeast. I'm sure this is online somewhere, but basically an ANC convening for input starting at 10 a.m. All right. With no further business to come before the board, we stand adjourned. Thank you for joining us today. We now will move to board executive session. So in accordance with the bylaws, I, Valerie Santos, request that the Board of Directors convene in executive sessions to discuss the following matters pursuant to Article 2, Paragraph 9, subsections. A, budgetary matters that may affect legal positions, WMATA contracts, or sensitive relationships with local jurisdictions in the federal government. And E, audit matters and investigations to include, for example, audits of IT security matters and investigations to be referred for further criminal investigation or prosecution. And H, development of WMATA position or strategy on pending or proposed federal or state legislation. Is there a second? Thanks, Director Lowe. All in favor? I did not hear a vociferous chorus, but I think that was all in favor. Any opposed?